Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I am your host, Teri Wellbrock, and thrilled to have with me today Lorna Minewiser, PhD, who is here to talk to us about energy healing, some tapping, EFT, and so much more. So welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm just thrilled to have you. And you had sent me answers to my questions ahead of time, which is wonderful because then I was able to really look at the work you're doing, your own personal story of overcoming fear, and how you utilize this. So yeah, talk to us about what it is you're doing.
Well, I do a lot of energy work. I was a therapist, licensed therapist for 15 years and retired when I moved across country because taking my license with me was too difficult. I work mostly as a coach and a trainer, and I've done some research in using EFT, especially with veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. I got involved in the Veteran Stress Project when I read the statistics that 22 veterans day, week, month, whatever it was, many too many, were committing suicide. Yeah. And I thought, I have this technique, I know it works, I've been using it for years, even though I'm not a veteran or involved in services in any way, I can't not do this. So I volunteered and worked with 6 actually veterans who were amazing, and every one of them had fantastic success with releasing the symptoms of PTSD and overcoming their insomnia and their PTSD triggers, and I'm in touch with almost all of them still. That was in 2013, 2014, and one of them called me the other day and he said, I'm ready to go on to my next level of EFT. So 3 of them have gotten the training to be EFT practitioners as well. So and I just worked with a new veteran yesterday. So, it's not my main focus, but it's just that I know this stuff works. And my main focus is spreading the word, teaching, training. I do some coaching as well, but and because I'm one of those people who just can't stop learning,
yeah.
I just
me too.
Oh yeah, it's like I was on some organizational thing, a small group, and we were talking about what gets in our way, and I said, and this is one of my mentees actually, graduates, and I said something like, I just don't know enough. And she started to laugh, and she said, Lorna, she said, you have a PhD, you have all these certifications, you do all that. She said, if you don't know enough, who does? And I said, but it's not just not knowing enough, it's just that there's so much out there to learn.
Yes.
And I don't know it all yet, probably never will, but there's this drive to, because I don't know what's going to work. Each client is different, and the more I can bring in something that helps, the more it works.
Well, what makes me think of is as people learn to become more in tune with their own needs and their own triggers and their own energy, that then it becomes a teamwork kind of thing, that you can provide the tools and the guidance and share your knowledge and wisdom. But it also requires, that's just from the practitioner role, but it requires, the person who's doing the healing work on themselves to also be willing to be in tune.
Yes. And when I first started the more professional study of energy psychology back in the early 2000s, one of the trainings was talking about the client has to be ready, willing, and able.
Yeah.
And so I was working with this new veteran yesterday, and so we did some energy testing to see, was she and she was willing, and she was more or less ready, but she wasn't sure that she was able. And so we had to address that first before we could address any of the traumas, any of the stuff in the past. So,
right.
I think that ready, willing, and able is all part of it. And all of those things are addressable.
Yeah. And I'll bet that comes up quite a bit. I know when I started EMDR therapy, I was certainly willing. I knew I was able to go back into those traumatic events, but I wasn't sure I was ready.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that was, I think, what on my end, what I had to address is that, oh, I don't know if I was ready to go back into that darkness. So
yeah. Well, and yeah, so like with this young woman, um, I just talked about, bad things happened in her life,
yeah,
and when did the bad things start? So part of it for me is like working with somebody new if they've had trauma, is to helping them calm their system first, and get that therapeutic alliance going so that they trust me, they trust the EFT, and so that they obviously want, because they show up, they come, and oftentimes they, meaning any of my clients, they're afraid. I have a client this afternoon who's in her 60s, and she's done a lot of work, but there's still some. She's done it from the more cognitive stuff, and she's done EMDR, and yet there's still something that certain things trigger.
yeah,
And so, part of what I do and how I teach my students is the ways, all the myriad of ways to get in to find what's the origin of that trigger, so we can release it.
yeah.
So
That's
it's
yeah.
detective work.
Oh, it is for sure. And I so absolutely relate to what you just said, because I had done the cognitive therapy, the talk therapy. I had done the EMDR therapy. We did some brain spotting therapy.
Hmm.
Um, but when I started then utilizing the tapping, oh my gosh, I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried through that first session of,
Hmm.
EFT. And what a cathartic release it was. But I don't feel like I did much processing, although I know I did, because I felt like I cried the whole time.
But
But
but that's a release. And the
yes,
thing is, what we're finding, and I'm very interested in the research. I'm not a researcher, so to say, but I'm willing to do what I can. But what the research is saying is that the memory reconsolidation is when you bring something up into your memory, or your memory field, if you're talking energy. And usually what happens is when you bring it up, it triggers you, and you have all whatever, anxiety, depression, fear, all this stuff comes up. But when you add EFT, or the tapping, or matrix reimprinting, or emotion code, you add something else that is increasing serotonin and reducing cortisol. You're actually, I mean, we don't have a way of actually proving it yet, but we think it's rewiring the brain.
yeah,
And so that as that energy is being released, that old energy is just, it's like it frees you up.
yes,
And so, I mean, I told this young woman yesterday, and I tell my new clients, is that some things that may be too painful to even verbalize, but they're there. And I tell them the story of this one young veteran, and in his 20s, and we were in the research project, and he came into my office. It was face to face. I do a lot of work on Zoom or phone, but this case it was face to face. And I think it was like the fourth session. And so he trusted me, and he trusted the process. And he came in and he said, I have three things. He says, I don't want to put them in your energy field. Can we just tap on them without talking about them? And I said, sure. And so we're sitting there across from each other, and he's tapping and I'm tapping, and he's crying and I'm crying, and I'm sending hard energy. And I don't know where he was or what happened or what they were, but he released them all.
yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's like, when you set that intention, and with the support of I mean, you can do a lot on your own with this, and he continues to do it. Um, I have one veteran that says, if he goes a day without tapping, he knows that he's missed it.
Right, right.
Yeah, but it's like that therapeutic alliance makes
Yeah,
and whether it's somebody that's licensed or somebody that's well trained.
right,
So
right. And
that's
and
my
when you
goal.
just brought up the whole rewiring, I'm a huge fan and a huge studier of brain plasticity, and
Me too.
I love the idea of the fact that we can create new habitual patterns. We
Mhm.
can, rewire the brain and change the impact that trauma that stored trauma and release that negative energy. And that's what I tell people, is that with all of the exercises I've done, Ho'opono, Pono Hawaiian healing, I've done the tapping, I've done, there's so many different
I
things.
did them together.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, when I released that stored negative energy, that's what I say those panic attacks were. It was that trauma trying to get out of me. And I just didn't know how to release it. And once I was able to process so much of it, and changed my whole life.
Oh yeah. I mean, for me, it's been more of a slower process of releasing. Because back when I was first introduced to this in 1991, there was no research out there. There was, it was hardly even talked about or anything. And that's when I lost my fear of heights, just, and with a 5-minute phobia cure. And that kind of sent me down this path, as I want to know more. I want to know how it works. And I ended up going back to start my PhD, and I wanted to study that for my dissertation. And my advisor said, but there's no research you can do. You can't do something unless you have some, literature review. And there was nothing out there. So now there is. Now there's well over 100 studies that are peer reviewed, and I mean, the skeptics are. I don't know how they can justify their skepticism anymore.
Well, and I think they're fading away because, like you said, the evidence is piling up, and which is beautiful. So talk to us about your personal journey with the fear of heights and how that transpired.
Well, I'd had this fear of heights from when I was a little girl. I think I fell down the stairs at like 3 years old, because I had this kind of vision of these long closed stairway, but I lived in Florida, and so that wasn't really a big deal. Because there weren't very many heights that you had to worry about. Right. But I did find like open stairways. I had to hold on going down. And so again, Florida's fairly flat, and there's not a lot of two-story buildings. And so in 1991, I was working on my master's degree, and I was studying self-esteem. And so I went to the self-esteem conference in Boulder, Colorado. Keystone, Colorado. And my husband is the kind of person that always likes to go to the highest place possible. And I had tried many times to go, look over the side of the mountain, go up the stairs, and I just couldn't do it. So I thought, well, I just read feel the fear and do it anyway. And here I am studying for my master's, and I should not have this fear of heights. So we went to Seven Falls in Colorado Springs the day before the conference. And there's like 237 open steps up the side of the mountain with 7 waterfalls. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I got up about 30 steps, and I absolutely froze. It's the first time, or probably the only time, I had a panic attack. Now I know what panic attacks feel like. I did not know that before. And it was, I was like frozen. And I said to my husband, and the banister was only on one side. So it was rock on one side and banister on the other, and these open wooden stairs and waterfalls down the side where the banister was. And I said to myself, just go ahead. I'll be fine. I'll go back down. I just can't go any higher. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get down. I said, they're going to have to get a crane.
Call the helicopter.
Oh, no. So I saw this little kid sitting down on his bottom and going down the step. I thought, well, that's the way down. So that's what I did. And it's embarrassing. But I got to the bottom, and I'm like, all right, that's it. There's no way that's gone. I'm going to be able to do this. I'll just have to live with it.
Right.
Lived with it for 40 years. Why not? So the next day I go to the self-esteem conference, and Jack Canfield gets up on the stage. He was real big in California with self-esteem back in the early 90s. And he said, I just learned this thing, and he did muscle testing, which I had never seen before. And then he asked, there were about 300 people in the room. He said, how many people have some kind of fear or phobia? So I'm like, yeah. And I thought, I'm going to be the only one. Well, there were a whole bunch of them in the room. I'm like, whoa, I'm not alone. And so he did the phobia cure, which was under the eyes, collarbone, under the arm, and then collarbone again, I think. And he had us tap while we thought about, and I'm thinking about, my panic attack the day before. And I thought, when he first, it was a 5-minute phobia cure. So it wasn't much of investigation on when's the early time or any of the stuff we do now. It was just focus on it and tap. And then he had this, like, this is ridiculous. Tap on the side of her hand and say, even though I have this fear of whatever, I love and accept myself. And I'm like, what? Why would I say that? I mean, I was your big time skeptic. And then he had us picture whatever it was, what we were afraid of. And I'm like, there was nothing. I mean, nothing. And I'm like, okay, let me test this. So my husband had been out, this was in Keystone, Colorado. So he's hiking around the Continental Divide all day. And I came out of the room and this is just still, I mean, that's almost 30 years ago. And I said, take me someplace high. I think my fear of heights is gone. And he said, yeah, right. I was with you yesterday. And so he took me back to the Continental Divide, and we're up there, and I'm walking around, I'm looking over, and he said, are you okay? And I'm looking over, and I'm like, yeah. I said, I could tap if I need to, but well, this is really quite cool. And there was nothing, no activation. And so after the conference, we were driving back, and it's, I think, Mount Evans, which is the highest paved highway in the country to the top. And so we're driving up there, and I'm, of course, on the passenger side, and most of the time it's, straight down on the side. And I'm tapping, but I could keep my eyes open. And I didn't have it. And on the top, I'm kind of, and he said, I'm like a mountain goat. And he said, be careful, don't get too close to the edge. And so that, it has never returned. And it gave me such a feeling of freedom. I mean, it was transformational for me. And he had always wanted to get his pilot's license, and I was afraid to let him. And so after that, I said, okay, why don't you go ahead? So he got his pilot's license, his small plane pilot, and then he got an ultralight airplane, which is like, I call it a lawnmower with wings.
Yes,
with this big glass bubble, and I could go up with him without having to tap or anything. And I could say, wow, this is really beautiful. And so, I mean, it was just that freedom, and it generalized. I mean, I didn't, it was like, if something came up, I would tap, I would just do that, what I'd learned there. And, I mean, he couldn't believe it, but he believes it. And whenever we go someplace high and there'd be somebody like, I'm not going near there, he'd say, my wife can help you get over that fear of heights. And a lot of times I tap, and people, I mean, it was just, when there's an uncomplicated phobia, which mine was, oftentimes it can be released when you release that energy just by tapping.
Yeah.
So sometimes it takes a lot more.
That you say uncomplicated phobia, because, with like my trauma history and my ACEs score being so high, and there was just such I call it a tangled Christmas ball, like a Christmas lights tangled in a ball.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been, obviously doing tapping released a lot of things for me. And
those are the 1-minute wonders.
Do what?
They call them the 1-minute wonders.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I love that. And I just think it's so fascinating. I had a horrific fear of flying. My oldest son moved to Colorado, to Denver, and we flew out in July, and I decided I'm not taking the Xanax, and did some healing work, and got on that plane. I had no anxiety, no panic, no sweaty palms, nothing. And it was amazing, because now I look flying back. Then we went to South Carolina, got on the plane. And so now I'm excited about the idea of flying.
Yeah. Freedom. Yeah. I worked with a student in one of my classes, and he came up to me after, and I always shared it. I was fortunate that I was allowed to share this as a technique, and in a psychology class. And he came up after and he said, I have to fly someplace tomorrow for work at 6:00 in the morning. He says, usually I get drunk before I go, but I can't do that with my boss and at 6:00 in the morning. He said, will this tapping stuff work? And I said, all we can do is try. So we tapped, I don't know, half hour or so, and tapped. So he missed the class, and then he came back the next day, and he came kind of almost, he's a big guy, came kind of skipping in, and he said, I am a flyer. I am going to Ireland with my cousin, because now I can fly. Oh. He said, and he was sitting in the airport tapping, And one of the other people said, what are you doing? He says, well, this is my weird, my psychology teacher taught me this weird thing that helps me with my fear of flying. She says, can you teach it to me? And so they were sitting there tapping, and I'm like, that's it. That's how we spread this. That's what you're doing. Is you're taking something that's an experience for you and being able to share it so that somebody else and so you can see I'm a little passionate about it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I get all fired up too, and just yeah. So, and I love what you said about teach people who reach people. So you work with, again, to help spread this so that others can continue doing it and helping others and so forth.
Right.
So,
right.
Well,
yeah, and I'm a trained certified EFT trainer. So that one of the things is I train practitioners, train and mentor practitioners so they can do it. So that's part of the teaching people to reach people. The other thing is I go into, next week I'm going to the women's health at the VA. And I'm going to be, and this is like the fourth time. They always invite me back every year to teach them something new. And, and I've shared whatever. I don't know what I'm going to share next week. I haven't prepared that far yet. But one of the things we use, and I mentioned, and yeah, looks like is this is the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology's the booklet that they use, and it has some of these techniques in it, and then some resources as well. So I usually use this when I go out and I do a presentation, like a Rotary presentation or like at the VA, and actually give people an experience of some of this energy work so that they can say, wow, there is something to this.
Yeah.
And so, and what my goal is, I'm 74 and I plan to keep going until I can't anymore. But it's to teach therapists so they can teach it to their client. I'd love to get into the VA. I've worked with some teachers and the idea of getting it into schools so people can start young with their kids.
Yeah.
I want to teach it to parents. So that's the teach people who reach people. So I love the one-on-one work, and I don't plan to stop that, but the more I can get it out there. And one of the things that I mentioned in when I put that out is that the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology has a humanitarian committee, and I've been on that for the last 3 or 4 years. And what they've done is that they have created quick and easy videos so that somebody that's in distress or has been through trauma can just go and click and go along with it. And so that's at the number 4r.support. And it also has the written and why you could use it, and it also is in Spanish. And so part of my goal is to get that information out there as well.
Yeah.
And we've just developed a PowerPoint, a presentation to train people to bring emotional first aid to their communities. And so that, like I'm in Northern California and there's been a lot of fires. And so many of us are involved with bringing the tapping and the calming exercises to people that have been traumatized.
Yeah.
And so, bringing it into the schools, and I have a couple of meeting schedule where I'm going to be demonstrating these things for substance abuse counselors. And so that they can, so if you can have some tools that shift your energy, that self-regulate, then you can get your brain back online.
Right.
I
love the idea of reaching children, because then you can stop PTSD, the symptoms, before it gets to that point. So
Mm-hmm.
releasing that negative energy, releasing that trauma from the body. Yeah, very powerful.
It is, and it I've had sometimes where people aren't ready, and so it doesn't work.
Right.
Or there's secondary gain. I worked with this client that had a lot of pain, and it would just move a little, and so I said, this is Carol Looks, what's the upside of keeping this pain? Because I don't have to go back to work.
Ah,
So what's the downside of letting it go? I'd have to go back to work. So why would the pain release?
right.
And
Right.
so, it's that I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And, no matter what we do, if you're not ready, you're not ready.
Right. Right.
So, and there are ways to help become ready, but you got to address that first.
Yeah. So any myths or facts that you would like to clarify for listeners?
Well, I mean, like Wikipedia, I think I put that in the thing. Wikipedia they are the utmost skeptics, and somebody will go in, like Gary Craig will go in and put stuff in there about what EFT is and what it does, and they'll take it down and they block it, and they'll put, they say there's no research, or they'll cite a couple of controversial research. And there's been solid research since 2010, and now here we are 9 years later with well over 100 peer-reviewed, and they won't acknowledge that.
Wow.
And in 2014, I think it was, I was on the research committee of the ACEP, and I was asked to write an article about what are some of the roadblocks to the dissemination of EFT research. And, I was looking back at it and the things I wrote about and, the citations and all, I'm like, a lot of this has not changed yet, even though now there are MRI studies.
Yeah.
There are brainwave studies. And so, I don't know. I mean, it's that they aren't ready and they aren't willing. And so Dawson Church wrote something about, that, he was quoting, who's the guy that first talked about paradigm shifts. I can't think of his name, but anyway, he said, a lot of things aren't accepted until the old guard dies off.
Yes.
But what's happened is back in 1999, the American Psychological Association, APA, were really resistant. And they put out a thing saying not only can psychologists not get continuing ed for energy work, any organization that offers continuing ed with using energy work, we will pull your
Wow.
Yeah. They were so adamant, which really got in the way because, research often occurs in colleges and, by researchers who need whatever, continuing education. So it wasn't until 2012 that they stepped back and said that, yes, we will allow continuing ed for some of the ACEP trainings and some of the ACEP, we have a conference every year with a lot of presentations.
Right.
But they still are very sticky about it. And what we've heard is that, I don't know if, I'm not a member of APA, what we've heard, and I don't know if this is true, it's either the incoming or one of the people that are running for president of APA is very skeptical. And so there's concern that
right.
continuing ed's going to be, and for therapists, they have to have a lot of continuing education hours. And so it's not that they're not willing to learn new things, but they'd like to get credit for it. If they pay for it, they want to get credit. I don't blame them. Yeah. And so, we don't know where we're going to be, in another year or so, if APA is really going to. But the other problem, I think, is that EFT was developed by Gary Craig, who is a personal development coach and engineer. Okay, Roger Callahan, who developed thought field therapy and the phobia cure, was a psychologist who actually got into all kinds of trouble for doing this. But thank God he maintained and kept doing. But people can learn to do this my certified EFT practitioners take several classes, and they have at least 60 hours, more than that actually, of where they have to do sessions and have the sessions critiqued and observations and continuing education. So it's not just like you go for a weekend or you go online and you just learn things.
Sure.
But there are other organizations that will do that, that it's just a brief online thing and now you're certified. So the concern of these psychologists, or counselors or therapists, is that there are unaware or not knowledgeable people
Yes.
Out there doing EFT and saying they are, EFT therapists or EFT, coaches, and not realizing that there's so much more to it. I mean, anybody can learn to tap, but there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. And I think that can be true with anything. When I first started EMDR, I went to a EMDR certified therapist.
Well, you have to be a therapist with EMDR.
Yeah. And it was horrible because he basically told me, well, one, he insulted me on so many levels as a woman because he said I have a fear of driving and of highways. And after 2 sessions, he told me that I was, cured, fixed. And he said, you just have to realize that you'll probably always be afraid of driving because cars are big and scary. And that's where he left it.
I'm going to have to tap on that.
All right. And I just remember sitting there like, did he just tell me that I'm afraid of driving because cars are big and scary for me? Like, I was so dumbfounded. So I ended up reporting him and found another amazing therapist, and we did work for 4 years. So if that tells you that he had no idea what he was doing. So you do get that. Yeah. And you just have to be careful of, and you'll know, I think, again, it is the energy thing. You'll know when you're working with someone if it's working or not.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And one of the things I teach people, what I've discovered really in the last, 5 or 6 years, is that I think what I've read is like 25% of the population are energy sensitives, and most of them don't know that they are.
Yeah.
And so that's a part of what it's like this young woman, both like 3 people this week, I talked to them about energy sensitivity. And one of the questions I asked is help people self-identify and say, if you're feeling pretty good and you go out someplace like to the store, to the bank, where you have to stand in line, and you start getting a headache or a stomach ache or feeling upset about something, and they're like, I hate to go out there. I bank online, so I don't have to do that. I go to the grocery store when it's empty. Okay, you're an energy sensitive. What's happened is that you've picked up somebody else's energy and taken it on. And then if you don't know that it's somebody else's, you think it's yours.
Yeah. Are you talking like an empath?
But it's, empaths are even more so of that, where they really, like an empath who's doing like Reiki or something, they'll actually physiologically, take that energy from the other person. Okay. This is just like when somebody's feeling bad, they're sending out, negative vibes, so to speak. They're sending out energy, pain energy. And if you're an energy sensitive, you're picking it up.
Right.
And so what I teach, the basics I teach people is to just ask, when you start feeling like you don't want to feel, just say, is this mine?
Oh.
And so it's like, is this mine? And trusting your body to tell you whether it is or not. Right. And so if it's not mine, I let it go.
Yeah.
And if it is mine, then it's something I need to work on.
Right. Yeah. Go home and journal and tap.
Yeah.
And
So what I teach is the Donna Eden zip up. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay. So the governing meridian, Centromere, I don't pay attention to the meridian because I don't know the names of all the meridians, okay? So there's a meridian that runs from the groin up the front of the body to just under the lip, and that's one of the places we tap. And so what Donna Eden, and she's the energy medicine person, is she calls the zip up. And so just imagine zipping yourself up 3 times with the breath, and then just letting it go. And what you're doing is you're protecting your chakras, those lower chakras, from picking up other people's energy. And so, I mean, I do that before I have a client, before I go out any place. It's like, I know I'm doing somebody else a favor, but I really don't want to do that.
Right. That's super cool. I love learning that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just really kind of simple. And, and the knowledge that that's what's happening is so freeing to
Yeah.
know, it's not me. I'm not going crazy, you know. And so that helps people shift from the not being able because they've tried so many things and it hasn't worked. Because then they walk out of the office and they see a big scary car.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, why did he
Oh,
implant that? I hope you tap that out.
right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and we have a thing in energy work. I think Roger Callahan said it's called the apex effect. And what the apex effect is that you release something so thoroughly that you almost don't even remember you have it, or don't remember you have it.
Yeah.
You don't have you've released the memory. You've released all the energy, so the memory is not energetically compromised.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a good friend who's a therapist. Was a therapist. She's retired now, and so she tells this story in our training. And she said she had this client, this woman that came in, and an older woman, and she had a terrible fear of driving because she had been in an auto accident. And so she wanted to work. She'd been referred by her doctor or whatever. And so she wanted to work on that. So Pat worked with her. And I don't know if it was just one session or several sessions. And they did the tapping and may have done a little EMDR because Pat was a EMDR therapist as well. And so the woman went out and she's like, well, I don't know, we'll see. Somebody had driven her to the office. And so then, I don't know, a couple weeks later, she called, made an appointment. And Pat happened to be standing in her office looking out the window as she was waiting for this woman to come. And she saw the woman drive up. And so the woman got out of the car and how are things going and all. And the woman said she'd driven across, this was in Michigan, she'd driven across the state from Detroit to, I don't know, the other side of the state. And to visit her daughter-in-law, whatever. And Pat said, well, we did a lot of tapping on that. And the woman just kind of rolled her eyes. And Pat said, well, what do you attribute to your being able to drive? Because when you came in here before, you weren't. She says, oh, maybe the drivers are getting better. But that's the apex effect. That's what happens is that the energy of it is no longer so bothersome that it's really kind of hard to even remember.
It's hard to explain why you even had it.
Yeah. Right. Especially if there's any shame about having it or embarrassed about having it.
Right.
So yeah.
But
it's and the thing is it's interesting how all these different aspects of something. I was in a car accident in June and I was in a new car. It only had like 30 miles on it. And it was a different time of day than I was normally leaving my office. It was more busy. And I went to pull out of the parking, I was ready to pull out of the parking lot and a UPS truck came and parked like here. And so I pulled forward just a little bit to try and see if it was clear to pull out, and somebody T-boned me.
Oh my goodness.
And I was, I was only out a little ways, and since then I've seen her brake tracks, and she pulled toward me instead of away, and okay, so it was kind of a combination of things, and my car was almost totaled.
Wow.
And I ended up with a partially collapsed lung and bruises all down my side, and I banged my head. So there's I don't remember getting out of the car. I don't remember the ambulance ride. So there was, something neurological going on. Anyway, so they wanted to give me pain pills, and I said, no, let me see, I'll just take the bare minimum, and I have lots of help. So I tapped, and I did energy work, and the lung healed on its own, and I thought I'd cleared it all up. Well, the car was in the shop for a month. And so I was driving my husband's car, and I could pull out and look, and I wasn't getting any activation. So then I get it's a mini SUV. So I get the SUV back, and I'm back in that same pulling out, not the same time of day, and I'm leaning forward, and I started getting that anxiety. I'm like, I haven't cleared that one thing. It was the leaning forward with the seatbelt across and looking out that I had not cleared. And so I cleared it, and it's fine, no problem.
Yeah. I love
So,
that.
it's
I
like
mean,
all
I'm
these.
sorry you were in an accident, but I love it that you were able to find what it was, honor that trigger,
Mhm,
and release it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I also discovered some interesting things in that they had me on uh, like ibuprofen and Tylenol. And I normally don't take medications like that because I know it makes me a little spacey.
Yeah.
So I don't even take cold medicine. Um, and I didn't want to take it. He said, you need to take it so that your lung will heal. And so, but I discovered that I had to cancel all my appointments, not because I was in pain, but because I couldn't energy test. I couldn't, I was not in my energy field
Right.
enough to do my appointments. I'm like,
Interesting,
aha.
because I don't take any medications. I don't like the effect that any medication has on me. I never have. Someone will say, if I have a headache, they'll say, "I'll take some Tylenol," and I'm like, "Oh, no, I'll just heat up my rice bag and put it on my neck." And yeah,
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 there's other things you can do, and I mean, and I know there's a place for it, but the other thing is, I don't ask why did I have that accident. It was a couple of days after my birthday, and I mean, it's like, all right, I was not careful enough, I suppose. I don't know. I could have done things differently. She could have done things differently, but the learning experience of when your mind has a mind altering chemical, what that does to your body,
yeah,
because I haven't been taking those. It's like, aha, here's an awareness that I didn't have, and how. Yeah, I mean, it's like, all right, there was a lesson in there that somehow I needed to
right,
learn. So now, I mean, it's really interesting that the last couple of months I've been invited to, and talking to people who are substance abuse counselors. And so I'm like, oh, maybe I needed that, as like, here's some techniques that can really help, and help
yeah,
your people that are dealing with addictions, and maybe help with your compassion fatigue. And so,
yeah.
yeah, taking my own experience and looking at it, how can that benefit others?
Right. You found the gift within the chaos, as I like to
That's
say.
right. Yeah, actually, I like that. I like that. Gift
Yeah,
within the
yeah.
chaos. Yeah.
Once I think we're able to finally, obviously in the midst of the chaos, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible. But
Hmm. Hmm.
once it's over and yes, you've processed, it
Hmm.
is amazing when I can look back and go, there was a
Yes.
gift in there.
Yes. Well, and one of the things with getting, like the humanitarian committee, we also have a part with what we call well-being. Is one of the things we want to do is teach these techniques to people so they have them before they go into crisis,
Right.
so that they can just stop and do the heart hold, the calming hug, or they can do the heart hold, or they can do they can do something that helps reduce the activation in the moment. And like Daniel Siegel says, it's like the brain are you familiar with that brain model?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when he talks about you flip your lid, what these do is to help your lid come back on.
Yes, right.
And so that then you can make a better decision. Obviously, you're not going to do them while you're fleeing from a fire, but when you're safe, to do them so you're not continuing to be fleeing from the fire,
Right,
energetically, emotionally.
right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we want to get, let's teach people, reach people.
Yeah. I love it.
Mm.
So my question that you've already mentioned her name, but I'm going to ask it. So if you could meet anyone in the world, dead or alive, to help you with your journey, who would it be?
I think I've met a lot of people through the comprehensive energy psychology. So that, if I'm looking at, again, teaching people who reach people, I think Donna Eden would be one, because she is an energy healer who sees energy, and I don't see energy, and I'd like to. And her husband, David Feinstein, I have met him and I work with him, and they are just an amazing couple. And I really thought about that one, and it's like she just kept coming up as a
Yeah.
person I'd like to really. I guess it's like when I went to Orlando I think a year and a half ago for the energy conference, she was supposed to be a speaker on the Monday, and so I paid extra to go to that. And then she had some kind of a medical emergency, and she wasn't able to come to that. And I'm like, oh, I'm just going home. So I canceled it because I wanted to be in her energy field. I
Oh,
mean, I can feel the exchange of energy between us. I mean, I work on Zoom a lot, and but but I'd really like to be physically in her field. So maybe I'll have to go take an energy medicine class someday.
that's so, I love it. I had one person one time, and it was a child. I worked in the mental health field in school system, and I was working with a kiddo, and this was a fifth grader, and we were sitting there talking, and all of a sudden she stopped and she said, "I You make me feel safe. I like being sitting with you," she said, "because you have a white light around you." And I was like, oh.
Yeah,
So it made me feel so good that like
yeah,
my energy that I was giving off was this, calming energy for this child, that she picked up on it and actually saw it.
yeah,
So it made me feel good that I was on the right track.
yeah, yeah. And so many kids can see the energy, and and they feel it. Definitely, they feel it. So
Right.
yeah,
Beautiful. So
yeah.
anything else that you want to talk about that we didn't get a chance to touch on?
Gee, I don't. Let me just look at your questions. I don't think so. Wow. Um. Oh, so the one question you asked, what would be my dream job?
Yes.
So I pretty much have my dream job. I would just really like to be able to reach more people. I like to travel, but I'm not one of those people who want to go all over the place traveling. But the power of Zoom, like you're reaching people. I mean, doing that to train people like online or even locally or in California, whatever, not far travel, but to reach more people and to see the ripple. This one thing I want to mention is on the back of this. Ulf Sandström and Gunilla Hamna are, you should interview them sometime. They're from Sweden, and their website is the Peaceful Heart Network.
Oh,
And they go all over war-torn countries, and they teach the trauma tapping technique, which is this in the middle there, the TTT.
yes.
And they work, and it's tapping without words, and because the language difference, so they go into the refugee camps,
Oh,
they go where the orphans, the widows, and they teach. I think they should be nominated for the Nobel Prize. But they've also created an online app it's at selfhelpfortrauma.org, and it's free, and it's this little like cartoon character, they call him Winky, and you can see the trauma, there's guns and all this, is like a little refugees, like a Teletubby, and then he gets this message about tapping, and it teaches you to tap along with it, and there's music in the background. And so my colleague up in Shasta, which is north of here, where they had all the fires, she said um, the firefighters are using it, the schools are using it.
oh,
So they are getting that word out and using the tapping, and they have a book called Resolving Trauma that's free on their website, the Peaceful Heart Network. And so they're just amazing people, and one of the things is they'll go into some place and they'll teach 5 people or so, or 10 people, whatever, how to do the trauma tapping, the main people in the camp, and that with the caveat that these people teach 5 people each. And so then they'll go back to the camp and there'll be 20 some people tapping, and then they'll go back to the camp and there'll be 200 people tapping, so that each one teach 5.
yes. Oh, and then, yeah, the multiplication of it
But
is just
yeah,
amazing.
and they are doing amazing work. And they just had they worked with Peter Stapleton, who's a researcher from Bond University in Australia. They did put together a research project to see, because they'd had kind of just keep track of results, how many people,
Sure.
what are the differences. But they did an official research study. I don't think it's published yet, but it's getting ready to be published.
There you go. Wikipedia can put that on.
Yeah, right. And then the other thing that speaking of Peta Stapleton is that she has a talk on a TEDx talk on the energy psychology, the new psychology. It's very interesting, and I ended up going into a Catholic church to do some tapping with a group of office staff who had seen that video and wanted the tapping for something that was going on in their church.
Yeah.
So the word is getting out there more and more,
Yes.
and you're doing a marvelous job of spreading it. I see you on the ACES thing, and yeah, so
Thanks.
thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, well, thank you. I love meeting amazing, as I say, beautiful souls doing beautiful work in the world, you included.
Thank you.
So thank you for what you're doing to help others along their healing journey. It makes my heart smile.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, and my granddaughter and I both love butterflies, and so we did this last week, and to spread your wings and fly. And so that's what I want to help people do, is to really be totally who they are and release all these negative limiting things that keep them from doing that.
Beautiful. So how do people get a hold of you?
Well, my website is coachminewiser.com, and I'm in Sacramento area of California. So I'm on Pacific time. Awesome. Do you want my phone number or my email?
Whatever you want to share. Can you spell out Coach Minewiser so people who are listening to the audio?
Okay, so it's COACH, and then my last name is MINEWIS, as in Sam, because people think I say WISER.com. Awesome. So all my contact information is on there. Wonderful. And my email is Lorna, Lorna, my first name, at coachminewiser.com.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. And I'll put it here on the video, but for audio folks, they now have it. So, yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. Well, I so appreciate this. I really enjoyed it. So.
Awesome. I did too. Thank you very much. I'm going to do a quick little closeout. Everyone, thank you for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And until next time, remember, be gentle with yourself. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.